Okay, welcome back to another episode of the YOKED podcast. I'm sitting here with Matt Welch, head coach of RX Fit, a couple of CrossFit gyms in Provo and Springville, Utah. How are you today, Matt?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Awesome. Also, for those that don't know, Matt is my brother, so this will be an interesting conversation, but looking for the coach-athlete wisdom that he can impart to us today.
Hopefully I can provide you with something helpful and meaningful. But yeah, let's get into it.
Okay, so tell us, what are some things you've learned over the years? You've been coaching for a couple years now, and now you're not just coaching athletes, but you're also coaching coaches and developing coaches.
Shoot, I lost my train of thought.
What are some things you've learned?
Okay, thanks. Yeah. So, being a fan of the sport for so long, I've learned more about how people move, watching professionals move, and that's helped me as a coach kind of get a better eye for seeing, and especially, like you said, coaching a couple of years now, I've seen a lot of the athletes move, and the same athletes over the past a couple of years. And so that's been super helpful. It's just kind of like developing a better eye for seeing movement, correcting movement, and knowing what cues do and don't help the athletes has been kind of the skill that I've developed the most.
Any embarrassing stories?
There's several, but the one that comes to my head first is we were one time doing L-sits on a box, and the athlete's hips were sitting really far behind, and so like the body angle was like a 45 degree instead of a 90. So I told them I was going to help push their hips forward, and I pushed them too far forward and they landed straight onto their back off of the box, and I felt so bad because it didn't look too pleasant of a fall. So that was a bad tactile cue on my part.
Yeah, well, we learn. We're not perfect. Okay, so walk me through, most of the coaching that you do is done in classes, but you have a new athlete that just signed up with RX Fit. Walk me through the process. They're joining your class every day. You usually coach the evening classes. Tell me, what's that process look like?
Yeah, so just kind of introduce myself. I bring them over to the TVs, which is where we have the waivers pulled up. So I'll pull one up for that athlete, and as they're filling it out, kind of get a feel for their personality, get a feel for the type of athlete that they are, their history with working out and everything. So that one's super big. It's kind of figuring out where the athlete is at on a strength standpoint, on a conditioning standpoint, whether they're currently active right now, what their goals are. Or even more importantly, if they've done CrossFit before, because if they haven't, that's another big thing I need to keep in mind, that this person doesn't know a whole lot of what we'll be talking about or the lingo that we have. So once I kind of get a general feel for that, I will make sure I am more thorough in my explanations as opposed to a class that's all regulars, and I will make sure I am with that athlete as much as possible, but not ignoring the rest of the class at the same time. And then just in general, like, you got to make sure you're asking that athlete after every single explanation if they have any questions. Because most of the time they'll pretend like they don't have any questions, but you got to say, like, are you just saying you understand so I stop talking to you, or are you saying I understand because you really do understand? But,
well, those first couple of weeks, it's a big ramp up because they're learning all the new vocabulary and trying to figure out what a snatch is versus a clean and jerk.
Yeah.
So, okay, so after that initial workout, first couple workouts rather, what are some variables as a coach that you're considering as you continue to work with them?
I would just say mechanics, drilling mechanics. In CrossFit, where you teach that mechanics should come before intensity. So especially like you were just saying, some athletes will come in for weeks and they still don't understand the difference between a clean and jerk and a snatch. And so you just got to make sure those athletes start to develop the proper mechanics, are moving safely before you start slapping on 45s and telling them to start becoming fire breathers.
Yeah. Speaking of fire breathers, you're becoming a firefighter.
Are
you
yeah,
a fire
let's
breather?
hope I don't breathe in any fire. But yes, I am. I'm excited about that.
Cool. Okay, when you first started with RxFit, you were in charge of programming, and you kind of entered in the workouts. You looked at other people's results. Over the past couple years, as you've been working in a CrossFit gym every day, what are some things that you've learned from a programming perspective that you think is often overlooked?
Reflecting on that time you put me in charge of programming, I was just starting out as a coach and as well as in CrossFit itself, and so I myself wasn't too familiar with the lingo, and it was pretty embarrassing just like looking at some of the abbreviations for like toes to bar or something. I'm like, what the heck is this, and having to look it up at the same time. But some of the things I am looking for is making sure time caps are appropriate for the workout that we have, and that athletes are finishing at a good time within that time cap. Because the most important thing in Metcons and for people coming in is the workout is designed and has an intended stimulus behind it, and that's the objective as the coach, is to make sure every athlete is hitting that stimulus. And that comes with getting to know athletes, getting to know their strength, getting to know how hard they push themselves, some scaling options that we need to do to make sure each athlete is hitting the intended stimulus. But overall, yeah, that's kind of
So
that.
at RxFit, we've been using YOKED now for a couple weeks.
Mhm.
What are ways YOKED has helped your athletes reach the intended stimulus?
Yeah, my favorite part about YOKED has to be by far the percentage lifting. I think that is, well, not just on lifting, but as well as introducing it into Metcons that we program. I think that is genius, and I am so happy that we finally have something, because just because you can lift a weight in, let's just use Grace. Let's say because you can clean and jerk 135, but that's like 90% of your 1 rep max, that by no means you should do Grace at 135. Okay, you want that to be 50%, somewhere around there, if not a little bit lower, of your 1 rep max. So that way you can hit that intended stimulus, which is under that 5-minute threshold. So that is my favorite part, is putting in percentages into the Metcons and as well as into weightlifting. Athletes are supposed to do, yesterday for example, we had a 5x5 front squat, and I said warm up to 80%, and then you're doing all 5 sets, all 5 reps at 80%. And so it takes out the guesswork that coaches have, and it gets people to actually hit the stimulus. You're no longer guessing, it's prescribed stimulus for these athletes. So they know when they come in, because a lot of them look ahead, okay, and do the calculations. They come in, know what weight they need to be moving.
Yeah. And then everyone's an RX athlete.
Yeah, and then everyone's an RX athlete, okay? You don't get those weird people that, not weird people, but you don't get those people that just want to click the button and then completely blow the workout up by not hitting the correct stimulus. I've said that word a lot.
Stimulus, it's a great word.
It's a fun word.
Okay, so what are some, maybe, because YOKED is intended to be a resource and tool to help the coach, not replace the coach.
Yeah.
I sometimes get that question. What ways, as a coach, since we've been using YOKED, have you seen is necessary from the human perspective? What does the coach need to be doing after the athletes see the workout?
The coach is coaching. Programming isn't coaching. That's just telling the athletes, this is what we're going to be doing today, but the coach is not there to to just like keep people on time. They're there to coach athletes. And so what we need to be doing is we need to be breaking front squat. Well, we need to be breaking movements down. So with the front squat, you need to be teaching the front rack. You need to be walking people through mobility. You need to be helping people with correct positionings, giving cues, everything like that. And so there's still plenty of work that coaches need to be doing. But it just is helpful because now the coach doesn't, on top of teaching correct movement patterns and helping people on that front, the coach no longer needs to be thinking about, okay, what should this new athlete be doing for the workout?
Good point. Coaching and programming are not the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think with old-fashioned CrossFit, we've always seen coaching as scaling as well.
Yeah.
When, sure, the coach is looking at movement patterns and can correct an even lowered weight or even up weight depending on percentage work, but that's not a major component of coaching.
Mm-hmm. One thing I would like to add too is that YOKED is programming to develop general physical preparedness. And so I love that aspect because I've seen over the past couple of weeks that we've been using it, how it's been targeting every athlete's weakness in here. If people are coming in and super pumped about a workout, it's probably because it's in their wheelhouse and they're gonna smash it. So although it's fun to lob them one of those every now and then, that should not be the objective of programming. It should be trying to get the athlete fairly good at every single movement.
Yeah.
So there's no strengths, no weaknesses, you're solid at everything.
You're like Matt Fraser.
You're like Matt Fraser, except he is very good at everything.
Is it Fraser or Fraser?
There's no Z. I think it's Fraser.
Okay, moving on. So, walk me through some other data pieces. Are you paying attention or looking at any other data pieces, whether it's an actual physical number that you're looking at or just things that you're looking for through your coaching that you haven't mentioned already?
Can you elaborate a little?
Yeah, so say you've got a class of 10 individuals, 5 of them have been doing CrossFit for 6 years, and the other 5 they started CrossFit within the past year. Are there specific things outside of movement patterns that you're trying to look or that you're analyzing?
Yeah, I mean, you should never be complacent with an athlete. I mean, there's always a way for an athlete to move better. So if an athlete moves pretty well say the athlete knows the correct movement that they should be doing, like how to move efficiently during like a 1 rep max snatch, but then during, Randy, the 75 snatches, they just start having round back, aren't moving efficiently. I think that's a time where a coach can step in and start cueing them there. And then same with the new athlete. Especially with the newer athlete, there's always ways to correct and help them. But every athlete should receive at least one cue every single class.
Okay, I agree with that. I was also thinking kind of in the back of my mind, are there other data pieces like nutrition or sleep or some of the other factors of health that we consider that you talk with athletes on an individual or group basis? Yeah,
okay, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that. So, I mean, people come in and they start to complain. Well, whether they've been coming in for a while, sometimes you'll get a complaint saying, hey, I've kind of hit a plateau, I'm not going anywhere right now. And so that's where you start diving in because you know the athlete's been consistent coming to the gym, or at least in this example, they have been. But what are their habits outside of the gym? Are they overexerting themselves throughout the day? Do they have an active job? Are they just thinking, I'm not getting better, so I need to do more? Or are they eating garbage and then expecting to perform well? Are they sleeping poorly? What are their sleeping habits? And so it's just kind of important for coaches to not just have a knowledge on CrossFit, like the working out portion of CrossFit, because CrossFit itself is all factors of health. So it's important that the coach has a sound understanding on what is a good sleep pattern, what is a good nutrition pattern for these athletes, so that if an athlete comes to them, the coach can help them. Yeah.
We've talked a lot about coaching athletes now. One thing that's unique to you and the reason I wanted you on the podcast is maybe give some insight on coaching coaches.
Yeah.
What are some things that you've learned as you've shadowed and had these sit-down interviews with coaches?
Overall, I think we have very, very good coaches, but same with athletes. We shouldn't be complacent with good coaching. We should be always striving to get better. There's always something a coach can do better. So it's just about drilling in the coaches' heads the way a class should be ran. And so shadowing, I am always looking for that, just making sure that the classes are being run efficiently, but as well as that the coach is hitting all the main points. And if they are hitting those main points, I start diving in more. So like, for example, a couple weeks ago, I shadowed a coach and they hit the main points that I was looking for, but during the mobility portion, they weren't using the main clock. And so I was saying, all right, start using that clock to start countdown. Keep yourself more accountable. Don't just guess. Same with kind of weightlifting portions or warming up for a thing. Set a timer, say, okay, I have 5 minutes to get through this. That's one piece, but as well, I just recently got my L2 a couple months ago, and what we talked about is efficient movement and teaching movement to classes, breaking the movement down, kind of what I was talking about earlier. And so we've been doing that in coaches meetings lately, where the coach comes in with a movement in mind. They come in with points of performance already drilled, so they know what the points of performance are. They know common faults, and they have like 5 cues, all verbal, visual, tactile cues that they can use to fix those common faults for that movement. And what it's doing is it's helping us really break down movement. So when we come to class and teach it to our athletes, it makes more sense. But as well, we come prepared and start storing that stuff into the back of our head about what faults we might see in our classes and how we can fix them. So it's overall just kind of helping us become more prepared for what we might see in a real class and helping them help the athletes.
Yeah, because the CrossFit athlete is paying a membership to be coached, right?
Uh-huh.
And one thing that I've appreciated that our listeners don't know is in our coaches meetings, you're pretty hard on the coaches. So if a coach, for example, gives a cue and then looks at another athlete after he gives the cue, you stop them and you say, you just gave them a cue, make sure they execute on the cue the next rep. Or they'll say things that are maybe a little bit wordy, like a 10-worded cue, instead of keeping it short and sweet, to the point, quick, actionable cue. So yeah, I think you've been doing a great job on that front. And
how could you have said that shorter? Short, specific, and actionable. Not sport. Short.
Short, specific, and actionable. Cool. Well, tell me what you're only with athletes for about an hour a day. Some athletes like to come early and stay after, but on average it's about 22, 23 hours a day that you aren't working with them. What are some things that you're doing or would hope to be doing more of in the future in order to stay yoked together with the athletes or with the coaches on that?
Yeah, so I think what's super important, especially as a head coach, is that you take your coach's classes and you take the gym's classes. Not only as a head coach, but as a coach in general, I think it's important that you take a class at the gym so you experience what the athletes are experiencing themselves. And I'm fortunate enough that I coach in the evenings right now, and so before I coach my 2 classes in the afternoon, I take a morning class and I see how one of our coaches coached the class. I've done the workout myself. I know what it should feel like. I know some adjustments that I can make that I think would help make the class run smoother, whether it be changing up the warm-up a bit or anything on that front. But I think me taking the class before I come in helps me relate to the athletes more, but as well helps me be a better coach for the athletes because I understand what they're going through.
Okay. What are some, you'd mentioned that you like to talk about maybe some nutrition patterns or sleep patterns individually with some athletes. Is there anything else that you do, and maybe some homework that you give athletes, or things that when they're not in the gym that you prescribe in order to stay more yoked with them?
I'm sure I've done it in the past. I haven't recently given any homework assignments, but just making sure I'm living what I'm preaching is
okay, cool.
important.
Now let's talk programming as we wrap some things up. One thing that's unique to us at RxFit is we reimburse all the coaches when they go on vacation or go home and visit family or whatever it may be. We encourage them to drop in at different boxes, take their classes, and then we reimburse them after they message you 3 positives and 3 negatives. What are some things that you've learned over the years, specifically from a programming perspective, as you drop in from these other gyms across the country?
So most of them use the bigger name programmings, whether it be CompTrain or NC Fit, something like that, or I don't think I've actually gone to a gym that used Mainsight, but most of them are paying for their own programming. However, what I have noticed is it's more of managing time that the coaches are doing. There's not really coaching going on. And I think that's unfortunate, and I think that's something that gyms need to do more frequently. I think coaches' notes need to be reviewed before you show up to class. I think kind of walking through and kind of just like developing better coaching habits is super important. So I really liked that you guys implemented that we can get reimbursed for going to a different gym, dropping in, because it gives us more of an incentive to go, and then we start to see adjustments that we can make, or maybe even we do learn something. One of the things I loved most about dropping in at this box in South Carolina is that they always have equipment laid out before you show up, and so that's been something that we've been trying to implement here, not wasting time getting equipment out, but that the equipment's already laid out in a nice formation so that when athletes come in, it's ready for them to use, and the equipment layout is perfect and how you want it, so you can see every athlete. So it just kind of helps you discover some good things that you're doing, but also some things that you can improve.
Yeah, programming really doesn't have to be complicated.
Mm-hmm.
I think CompTrain, NC Collective, Icon, Mainsight, whatever programming you follow generally has some kind of GPP component to it.
Yeah.
But it's how can we execute that in order to help the athletes on a one-on-one basis get fitter, avoid sickness. But where can our listeners find you, Matt?
So I'm on Instagram at Matthew and then Welch, but drop the W and it's just one word, so one W, Matthew Welch, or Matthew Elch. Facebook, it might be Matt Welch. And then I just started a YouTube channel. Like Tyler said, I am going to be a firefighter, so I've been kind of documenting that whole process of me training for that and what classes I'm in right there and stuff. So you can check out my YouTube channel. It's Matt Welch. There's like 100 of them, but if you look up Matt Welch fire, I'm sure you'll find something.
Or they can type in the fire-breathing firefighter.
The fire-breathing firefighter. You won't find me, but you might find something on YouTube if you look that up.
Any parting thoughts?
No. I think if you guys aren't using YOKED, I think you guys should start using YOKED. It's a game changer for sure.
Cool. Well, thanks, Matt.
Yeah, thank you.
Right at 25 minutes, perfect.
So, me, 3 days after I've done this podcast, had a super fun time sitting down with my brother talking about the programming software that him and the other owner of RxFit, Mark, have developed. I think it's a super good idea. I think it has a lot of potential, and I'm excited that our gym is using it.
So hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. If you guys have any questions, let me know about them down below. I'll be happy to answer them for you. And don't forget to subscribe and like this video. And as well, if you guys want to check out the Yoked programming for yourself, it's over at yokedfitness.com. So thanks again, guys. Have a good day.